recording. And then I will share the screen. Here we go. Get that down. There you go. Okay. You all did a great job. It was wonderful watching your homework come in. It was a lot of fun. So I can't wait to hear you all talk about it. Okay, just as a collective, how hard was this assignment or how easy was this assignment?
You want to listen?
Amanda?
It wasn't too hard, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. Middle.
Middle. Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Finding the flowers that were in bloom that would match the
Yeah.
paintings. That was the hardest part, I think.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Challenges this week? I think overall you all chose some interesting photos, lots of stuff to talk about when we're looking at your photos. So Amanda, I'm going to go ahead and let you start. This one is yours. Your turn bell. Describe why you chose this one. Here is the original that this was your inspiration piece.
Right.
And then what did you do to recreate it?
Okay, so I chose the original partially because it has one of my favorite flowers, peonies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out he lived in New Hampshire, and that's where I grew up. I think he painted that while he lived there. He was I think a student or somehow knew Manet, Edouard Manet.
Uh-huh.
And so that was interesting to me. I do like it, like an impressionist style of painting.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was probably the biggest problem. After shopping, I realized, oh, this really isn't the time of year for peonies. So, but I was like, I really wanted to do it. Kind of married to it at that point. And so I had seen these country roses at Trader Joe's, and I thought they have a little bit of a peony kind of look to them, more than your traditional, I guess, rose.
Yeah.
And so I had a backdrop that I thought would work. It wasn't quite the same brown color, but it was kind of rough texture that I thought would work. Yeah, so that was the hardest thing was I think Susan said, just trying to find the right flower.
Yeah. And then how'd you light it?
This is natural light. I didn't add any artificial light, partially because I still really don't understand that well enough, I think. But it was a cloudy day, so it was nice. It was already kind of the light was already kind of filtered, so that I feel like that helped. And I used a friend of mine let me borrow a Lens Baby Velvet 55 lens.
Yeah.
I used that on this too to kind of give it that impressionist kind of look. I used a lower aperture also, kind of blur so it wouldn't be so really crisp like a photograph, or like a impressionistic painting.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. That's if you look over to the right-hand side of the screen, that's probably the Lens Baby is preventing us from seeing what lens is being used and what f-stop you're using. So the only thing that's recording is the ISO and the shutter speed. Yeah. I think it's beautiful. I think your lighting on it is really nice. It's pretty similar to the original photograph in its layout, and with this one rose going up at the top, and then the only thing you're kind of missing is this rose going over here onto the side of it. Yeah. A little bit, hanging out there just a little bit, but I like the light on the vase. I think the light on the vase is very pretty.
Thank you.
Looks nice. Looks nice. Now, something that was intriguing is you see these little white lines down here.
Yeah.
So I had to go see if I could find a better rendition of this painting. And so I found this one.
Oh,
And it turns out that these were some the beginnings of some little Asian characters.
yeah, I think I read that he had put something there, but
Yeah.
to put something there.
Yeah. And then I think that's interesting because your eye goes through all these flowers and you notice that we're dealing with these blues and pastels and reds and oranges and stuff. But then to me, your eye catches that little hint of lightness there and then sweeps back around. That one little rose hanging off the edge there, or peony in his real wear, hanging off the edge, just sort of lets your eye drop down and come back around.
Yeah.
So it stays in the frame, which is what you're hoping will happen
Right.
as an artist or a photographer. So you did a good job. That was very nice. I think that's a nice rendition of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Any questions for anybody for Amanda? Did you like using that lens, baby?
Yeah, it seems to like it. I mean, I had to do manual focus, but it seemed real easy on that one to do the manual focus. And lenses, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives a nice, I don't know, I don't know what to call it, but nice glow, I guess.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Any other questions? No? So Henry, here's yours. Thank you very much, Amanda. And you did your three lenses, how close you could get, right?
Yes.
Yes. And this is the 12 millimeter lens. So this is your wide angle lens.
Right.
And you see it's so wide that it goes off the background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I couldn't really focus much closer with that lens.
Yeah. About how close does it get?
Well,
About a foot?
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit less, but still being such a wide angle lens, it picks up everything.
Yeah, it picks up everything. And then here's your second one, and this is your 45 millimeter, and this is your 45 millimeter macro, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then here you come with your 50 millimeter. Fixed lens again, Henry?
No, this is a 50 to 200.
50 to 200. So here's
I
50.
try to shoot at the low end.
Okay.
All of
And-
these.
And then here you are at 107. What's 107?
Oh, it's 100 to 400.
Oh, that's the 100 to 400.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just crept over a little bit.
Yeah. I was curious. You notice that the black background isn't black in 3 of them, but in 1 of them, the black background is black, like it
Yeah,
should
I don't know
be.
what that was.
Well, I went investigating, and you used your evaluative, or in your camera, it's called patterned. So for Nikon, this is your matrix meter. For Canon, it's your evaluative. And for the Lumix, it's your patterned light meter. So it's looking at the entire scene.
Oh,
And
okay.
but what's interesting is you got, it came out sort of that greenish color. That's because of your indoor lights that you were using and all that.
Right.
And on this one, it came out like it should. Did you do any post-processing on that one?
No.
No? Okay. So just a stroke of luck then, huh?
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Now, you
Yeah.
know what? I think I started off using a green poster board and then switched to black.
Oh,
Maybe-
is that green? Is that a green poster
No,
board to
you know what?
begin
Now I
with?
can't tell. That's probably black. I'm sorry.
Okay. And
I
then
think it is.
I bet you that's green.
I think that one was green.
and and the last one's green. I bet you that's
Yeah.
what the
I
change is.
think
is
I
the change-
switched off.
It's the change to the black poster board once you came to this one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Black.
Yeah. Much, much better. It's interesting how just one color like that will throw off, your light meter, and
Yeah.
the color of the rose compared to the color of the rose. So watch that, especially when we're working with indoor lights that aren't
Okay.
white balanced.
Okay.
And then here is your inspiration, a Georgia O'Keeffe rose,
Right.
right?
And I really tried to find some Georgia. I really liked her poppies and her calla lily and cantaloupes. They're not in stock.
That's
At least
right.
at the
That's
florist. I
right.
said there's a problem in Chile with them or something.
That's
So I ended
right.
up going to the rose.
Yeah. Yeah. So the rose. And then here's your picture there. And then you used your 45 millimeter macro for this one, right?
Yes, with the Kenko 12 millimeter and the Canon close up.
Oh, cool. So you got really close.
Yeah, yeah.
How'd you like that setup then when you put
That's
that
a great
Kenko?
setup.
It's a
I
great
really
setup,
like
isn't
that.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You did a good job. And it's perfect for this type of stuff.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
great.
Now I went investigating too. So just like
Uh-huh.
Amanda's Turnbull, I had to go looking. And
Sure.
this is not a Georgia O'Keeffe.
I
And
think it's a photograph of an O'Keeffe.
it's a photograph of a rose inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe.
Oh, okay. It was on
Yes.
her page. So
Yeah, it was on it was on Pinterest. And
Yeah.
but I went through the catalog, and because I wanted to see the real Georgia O'Keeffe. You see one right here that's sort of, where's the where my cursor is? Yeah. Because I wanted to see the real one. And this is a rose inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe on
Okay.
Pinterest. But I'm not going to ding you for that. You did a
Okay.
good job. So you did a nice job impersonating. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Good job. It's got good color to it. It's very pretty.
That's
Questions for anybody on using the extension tube and the close-up filter on the lens? No, y'all good with it? Okay. There we go. Okay. And Jen, this is yours.
Yes. That is Baby's Breath. There was not a painting inspiration for that one. That was just to get as close as you can
Uh-huh.
to
And
the flower.
And you're also being brave. Look over here to the right. You'll see that this is at 2.8 at a 24-70. So look how shallow that depth of field is. That is just a minute depth of field, as we talked about before, that if you're going to try to use that 2.8, you better be right on it. But look at this beautiful blown out background. It has a beautiful bokeh to it. So there's a lot of possibilities to playing with that one. And then here you zoomed in. No, you're still at 55 millimeters on the verbena. Yeah. Yeah. And still 2.8. So yeah, not much depth of field, but very pretty.
Thank you.
And then here is your inspiration or your recreation. Tell me what you did.
Well, I happened to receive flowers from a friend this week, and so it's that's what started me trying to find something to be inspired by sunflower paintings. And so I found this painting by Diane, I think Fujimoto. Yeah, Diane Fujimoto. And when I did the photograph, I was using just the natural light. It was in a room that's well lit by lots of windows. And then I also used the reflector to kind of get a little bit more light on the sunflower to brighten it up a little bit. And this is what happened.
Yeah. And then look over at the far right, you'll see that I took the shadow slider and really ramped it over, because in the original
Yeah,
the center was really dark. So I took
Okay.
that shadow slider and really ramped it over.
that did make a big difference.
Makes a big
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I noticed in this image that, we're looking at the flowers and stuff. I mean, the rays, but yet in this really draws your eye to it as well. So there
Mhm.
needed to be a little bit brighter interior to draw your eye into it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good job.
thank you.
And that was which lens?
It's the same lens. It was the 24-70.
24 to 70. Okay.
Mhm.
Very good. Very good. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Okay, Lexi. So you're playing around with getting as close as you can, right?
Yep.
Yep. And this is your 15 to 45 millimeter lens at 45. And I see that you
Yep.
opened it all the way up to f32 to give you
Yep.
lots and lots and lots of depth of field.
I did not notice that the ISO was that high. So I was like, why is it too bright? So I just
And
take
that could be, yeah, you got to be sure to
Mhm.
keep that light meter right in the middle. Yeah.
Mhm.
Were you on the tripod on this one?
No.
No, you got to be on that tripod. But it looks good,
This is a distance of the ground too short for our tripod to be able to reach.
Ah,
Like it's right on the floor.
well, you could put your flowers on a table. Yeah, move the flowers up to the tripod. And then here
Yeah,
you
but
go.
we didn't want our cat to like come over to the table and start eating the stuff
That's
because
true.
our cats do that.
That they do that. And then here you are
I
on your
think I got off the lenses. It's possible I accidentally didn't do a lens.
now what?
I think I got off the lenses and I think I got off hand, but it's possible I accidentally like missed a 28 millimeter. I don't know if I did or didn't.
Okay. Well, I think you only had to use 3 lenses on this homework assignment
Mm.
because here's your 100 millimeter.
Yep. I think I missed the 28 millimeter by accident,
Okay.
but that's about what the 28 millimeter does.
Now, see, that's your 100 millimeter right
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the last one's another 100 millimeter.
It says it's the 15 to
Mhm.
45. Mhm.
Yeah, I also have a 28 millimeter somewhere.
You use the 100 on both of these. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But
I
you
guess
kept this edge in nice focus and you
Mhm.
didn't get too close. So you kept it in nice focus on that one. And then here you've got it also in nice focus with your 100 millimeter. And you did an f32 on this one too, so that we got all the depth of field in
Okay.
there.
That one's currently set to my computer background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a nice image. And then here's your inspiration photo.
Yep, we did not do the best at it.
Why did you choose that picture?
Because we have the false garlic flowers that look kind of like that in our backyard.
Okay.
So might as well. So we figured that one could be the easiest to do.
Okay. And then here's your recreation.
Yep, we use the same flowers from the previous image.
Oh, okay.
So we had to kind of do
So
a small cup so that they would be slightly better to scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did not do a good job though.
And then you've got your background about the right color.
Mhm.
Yeah. And probably could have pulled the flowers away from the background a bit so we didn't get the shadow in there.
Yeah.
And then you've got your, at least you got your proportions right. I thought it was quite interesting, Lexi, because another student used this same picture last time I taught this class, and this is what she did.
She did a lot better than I did.
So I thought it was interesting when I was cleaning out from last class, I saw that somebody had selected the exact same picture that you selected, which is quite a coincidence. But she used some of it, and I think she used it because these lilies were available when the time came to do the class. So good job. How challenging was that, Lexi?
Not really, since we got the flowers. We had already had the both types of flowers, but we just need to get like the little face thingy.
Uh-huh. Okay, very good, very good. Any questions for Lexi on her homework? No. Okay, Susan, this is yours, and you're using the 24 to 105, getting as
Yeah.
close as you can, right?
Right. I think it was probably, I didn't measure it, but it looked like it was a little bit less than a foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was using the 105 millimeters for
Yeah.
this picture,
Yeah.
and not a lot of depth of field.
F10 though. You did pretty, that's pretty good.
Right, but I
Yeah.
mean, it didn't give me even at that, it didn't give me a much depth of field at that distance.
Right.
It was just too close. But you know, I mean, I was satisfied with the photo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's I was on my back porch, so it's natural light. I
Mhm.
wasn't looking at. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that one I did got pretty close with that lens.
Yeah.
Then this is a Kalanchoe, and so it has lots of
Uh-huh.
little flowers on it. And the next one I took with the 100 to 400, the nearest I could get was like 3 feet away with that. I couldn't get any closer.
Yeah.
And at 100 millimeters, this is what I got with that.
And, but even, with this 100 to 400, this is at 5.6.
Yeah.
If that background were a little further away, it gives you a really nice background.
Yeah, yeah.
Very pretty background. And this 24 to 105, it's 9 inches away. And I really like that lens as a macro lens.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So good job. And then here's your.
And then this one is my bridge camera. It's a crop sensor camera, and I put a close-up filter on the front of the lens. It's actually 24 to 600 millimeter, 35 millimeter equivalent lens on that camera, which I use a lot when I travel. But I put a close-up filter on the front of the lens, and I got in really close to this lily, and you can almost see the little individual particles on the anthers of the lily.
Yeah, it's got an incredible sharpness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're handling it right too, because you're on tripod and all that other stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But it's those anthers, you can just see all the detail in them. That's beautiful.
Thank you. And then the reason I had the lily is that I love Georgia O'Keeffe's work, and so I was looking for one of her pictures that I could find the flowers for, and I like her canna lilies, but of course those are not in bloom yet. But this one pink lily, I thought, oh, okay, well, it's not exact, but it's pink and it's a lily, and I could make a picture of the lily.
Yeah. So here's your inspiration.
There's my inspiration. She filled her painting with the flower, and so I did the same thing with my photo, even though it's not exactly the same color. It's got the spots in it and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty, and it lets the eye rest in here and then move around. There's enough stuff to look at it as your eye moves around the photograph. Yeah, which is what you want.
That's right, exactly.
And then
the next one is something that I threw because I had mentioned last week. This is in Monet's garden in Giverny, and the reason that I took this picture is, like I was telling you earlier when we first got on, the painting that I remembered, one of his water lily paintings. I thought, yeah, go ahead and click on that. So you can see the painting. I thought those were clouds that he was painting. But then when I saw the garden, I realized that he was probably painting these white flowers that it really kind of fools your eye. You have to stare at it to see where the flowers end and the water begins. And so
right back in here. Uh-huh.
back,
Yeah.
and yeah, so, and there, it reflects the white flowers really well in the water. And then there, I guess there's a little bit of sky right below those flowers in that picture. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful setting. But I realized that, no, he really was painting white flowers in his painting.
The reflections back there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay. Good job. Any questions for Susan on her work? Nope. Okay. You all did a good job. Okay. Stop sharing for just a moment. Let me get rid of this. There you go. Whoops. Did I disconnect you all? Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Oh, you're still there. Good, good, good.
Still
I didn't
here.
hear anything. All of a sudden, it's like, push the wrong button. You know. Okay. Whoops. Let me get my act together here. So tell me what it was like for you all to have to find that photo and then try to create it. How was that? How did it work through your brain? Was it hard?
I don't think it was hard for me. It was mostly trying to plan out, okay, first I thought, oh, I can just pick a painting that I'm going to be inspired by. But then I realized, no, I have to figure out what my resources are first, which is what flowers are available to me. Then I might be able to find a painting that would be an inspiration, based on what I have.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was, thinking about the process of setting up the photograph and the lighting. And I had to have a helper because of my recent surgery. I'm not allowed to even pick up my camera. It's a little heavier. So I had my daughter helping me with putting it on the tripod and getting it where I needed it to be so I could click the button,
Oh, that made it even harder.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was really the process for me, was first figuring out what are you going to start with. You don't start with the painting. You start with what your resources are.
Mm-hmm.
Then you come up with the painting that you're going to be inspired by. So
you had to go shopping first.
Well, luckily someone
You
sent
had
me
some
flowers, so
Yeah.
that's what I used, and so that helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of reverse engineered also, although I knew that I because I like Georgia O'Keeffe's work, I knew that I wanted to do one of her flowers, but then it was just a matter of seeing which flower was in bloom and matching the photo to the flower to the paintings that she had made.
How about Amanda and Henry? Did you all just work with the flowers you had?
No, I really, that was the most difficult part, was trying to find, there are a lot of her paintings that I really liked more, but I couldn't find the flowers anywhere.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do the smart thing. I always do things backwards. I got married to a painting and then like, well, I really want to do this, so I better figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
So, but that's typical me. Backward.
Yeah, I do that. I do that in other parts of my life too. Yeah, I decide this is what I want, and then I go shopping for it, and it's never there. So then it makes it harder. Okay, so you all did a good job. Thank you all very much with that homework. So what we're going to talk about now is when you are photographing flowers, something that you've got to watch out with, especially when we're dealing with super saturated colors, is that we can overexpose the color. And on the histogram, we end up getting a spike off of the histogram in that color. So in your black and white histogram on the back of the camera, you might get a spike that goes up to the very top, and that means that it's overrun a channel. So in this photograph of the hibiscus, you'll see that some of the reds are just almost too red. And the same thing will happen on this pink. You notice that the pink is almost too pink. And so we've got to be aware of this when we're in the field. This yellow can almost be too yellow, especially since it's up against that dark background. So the yellow can be a little bit too yellow and we can overexpose. And here you can really notice it on these fuchsia, that in this bright light down in Costa Rica, you notice how many of these colors are just overexposed. And if you look right here where my cursor is, y'all can see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right here where my cursor is, the highlights are overexposed. And even though they're not white, they're overexposed. So you can see that there's just this globby kind of ink there, as opposed to any sort of detail in there. So even though we're not blowing a white, we can overexpose color if we're not careful also. So in a flower like this, we've got nice subdued lighting, we've got nice soft lighting, but several times when I photographed it, I realized that there was no detail at all in those petals. So that that beautiful veining that's in there was just totally overexposed. So I had to underexpose to capture that color. And this happened to me recently photographing some bluebells. And then the way that you can correct this later on is you can go into your hue, saturation, and luminance, and it's in either your Lightroom Elements or your Adobe Camera Raw, whichever one of the products you use from Adobe. You go into the hue, saturation, and luminance, and you pull down that one color. So you can't see it too much, but this area right in here is just a blob of color. But if I blow it up for you, oops, I missed my blow up. It's supposed to be in there. And then here it is. Oh, here's out of the camera. I'm sorry. It's right here. So this is my overexposure right in there. I'm sort of losing veining, and here it is blown up. But you can see this area right in here and kind of coming over into here. There's no detail anymore. It's pretty minute, but there's no detail in there. And that's because I just completely overexposed that purple. And then when I tone it down, now that you can see the detail in that area once again. So it's a little picky, but it's a master's class. So that's why I'm pointing it out. So when we are in those really, really, really intense colors, if we're not careful, we might need to use that hue, saturation, and luminance slider to kind of pull that color down and save that color. So be careful when you're looking at it through the viewfinder, on your histogram. If you see one spike, usually in the middle, going all the way off the grid, then that means you've probably overexposed one of the colors. And then that's when you'd need to slightly underexpose to bring that detail back. But it's usually in your really, really rich colored flowers, and especially if we're in the bright sunlight. Have you all ever noticed this
No.
or ever encountered it?
Yes, I've noticed it.
You have? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, Henry, that red rose, for instance, you could, if that were outside, you could
Mhm.
just completely overexpose the red.
Got it.
Yeah. So it would be a
Mhm.
challenge. Anybody else ever notice it before or experience it?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. So it's just one of those things that we got to watch out for. And then I take you back to the color wheel that we talked about last time, take you back to that color wheel, and going back to this color wheel, your primary colors, your reds, your yellows, and your blues, they form this triangle with that color wheel. So they form that triangle. And then, so they form that triangle, that red and the yellow and the blue. And then as you gradually take that yellow and add a little bit of red to it, then you get this light orange. As you add more red to it, you get orange, orange. And as you add more red to it, you get red, orange. And then in your color wheel also, when you take this orange and add a little bit of white paint to it, then you get a lighter orange. When you add a little bit of black paint, then you get a tint, which turns it into this more burnt orange. And then as you add more black paint, then you end up getting this grayer orange down in here. So that's what this color wheel is showing you. And so those primary colors, as I showed you this last week, when we see primary colors together, it should just stop us as a photographer in our tracks. There is a photo there because we've got those primary colors right together. And that would tell us there's something here. We just need to stop. We need to notice what's going on. We need to figure out where the photograph is, and we need to do something with it. That green mixed with that blue, if you think about it, we've just added a little bit of yellow to that blue, and then that starts getting us more into some of the other color shades. But when we see that yellow and then the blue, that's telling us there's a photo here. We should stop. We should look at it. We should figure out how we can put the elements together, what we can do with it to pull it all together. So those primary colors are so embedded in us as humans that when we see them together, we should know that we've got a photo that can be created there somehow when we put those primary colors together. So those primary colors, once again, are those yellows and those reds and those blues. Those are the primary colors. And when we see those, we should know that, okay, there's a photograph here. I've got to figure out how I can make it, or we've got some harmony that can go on here. You see that red and that green. So when we see these red and the green, and going back to your color wheel, they are across from each other, your red and your green. So those are your complementary colors. Those are our Christmas colors. So they're the easy ones to remember. But it's also the oranges and the blues and the yellows and the purples. So when we see those colors together, then we know that we're going to have harmony in that. And then we know that, okay, this is going to mix. So we see that red and that green, then that tells us that these are going to mix together and that this is going to look good and that this is going to be harmonious. Then got a little bit of purple there. So this tells us, oh, okay. So, they're kind of triangular. So this tells us that they're going to work. Most of the time, luckily, the photos the colors in nature work with each other. But in the event that we're setting something up or trying to arrange something, then we've got to really seriously think about what our colors are going to be. And so even if it's more subdued, so now we're going more, this is Yves Saint Laurent's garden, once again in Marrakesh, Morocco, and we've got that blue, but now we've got that much more dusty color, that more tinted color of blue-green to pull everything in. And then we see the same thing in this type of a setting where we've got that intense blue, but now we've got that green, and then we've got that shading since it's in the shadows to make it a little bit more subdued. So we've got to think about where these colors fit on the color wheel and whether or not they're actually going to pull together. This is that greens and purples. So as I showed you on your, and the greens and purples and the yellows and purples, as I showed you on your handout with complementary colors, these are colors that go well together. And so we should be looking to pull them together into some sort of a photograph. So this color harmony, some of you might have it innately. You just can pull something out of the closet and pull the bottoms out of the closet, and you can put the shirt and the blouse together and they just have color harmony to it. Some of you may not. My husband just can arrange clothing outfits like I've never seen, and he just doesn't even think about it. What tie goes with what shirt and what goes with his pants. He just pulls all the color harmony together. Where me, it takes thinking which one of these things goes well together. So that color harmony is something that we've got to think about, even if it means that you just have to keep a little color wheel with you to think about what, should I be paying attention? I saw this yellow dahlia, and behind it, it had that purple wall. And that really wasn't a purple wall, but it was the way the light was shining on the bricks that made it a purple wall. So that yellow and that purple right across from each other. That tells you, oh, okay, this is going to be in harmony with each other. So as we're seeing those flowers up against those backgrounds, then we should think about this is something to stop and work with. So before positioning this dayflower where it is, this is a natural growing dayflower. Do I include it with this purple background, or do I not include it with this purple background? I think that they're kind of in harmony with each other, so I wouldn't have any trouble progressing forward with the photograph. But as I showed you all last week, sometimes things just don't matter. They don't match as well. But when we're thinking, once again, about, somebody who was designing this flower pot, I hope that they thought about what color that wall was when they put those beautiful dusky succulents against each other, because then it ends up being harmonious with each other and they blend with each other. So designing a garden holds true to designing a photograph, holds true to designing a room or designing an outfit that we might buy. It's still the same color harmony going in. And then thinking still about that color harmony that, here you see that we've got the yellows and then we've got those pinks and we've got those greens. So, how much are these really pulling together, and do I include that much green in the background? Do I not? Just thinking about that color harmony. And how do we know that it goes together? It goes together because we kind of work it in a triangle. And then also we can work it in a little bit different triangle. We can go the yellow going down to the red violet. And then we can work that with the green and the yellow and the red violet. So we can work these in smaller triangles as opposed to just the big, huge triangle. So thinking about which one of these colors goes well together and are they going to be in harmony together. So we look at something like this and we see that we've got reds, yellows, and oranges. So we know that all of that go back to the reds, yellows, and oranges right here. They're all pretty much in the same line, so in the same palette. And then we mix that with the green. And so we know that this is going to go well together. And so we look at that and we think, okay, so it's going to work as a photograph as well as it worked as a garden design. No matter how small, no matter how big we might be working. Little fairy garden. So you're walking somewhere and you're looking for photographs. This is in Tuscany. You're walking and you're looking for photographs and you see those primary colors. You see blue and yellow. Blue and yellow. We've almost got a red wall there. So we've almost got primary colors. So we got that blue and yellow. And so this is telling us as a photographer, stop. There's a photo here. Because we've got those color harmony, we've got those colors that are in harmony with each other, and this is going to draw the viewer's attention to it. Now, it's up to you whether you decide that you're going to do it like this or whether you're going to do it like this. So that's where you get into that that creative nature of you as a photographer. So where are we going to pull this together and how are we going to do it? But we know that we've got the bones because we got that red and we got that yellow together. Excuse me, the yellow and the blue together. So we know that we've got it together. So there's a photo there. It just depends on how we then ultimately want to render that photograph and what we want to do with it. Shallow depth of field or lots of depth of field. Just depends on what we want to do with it. This is a friend of mine, Sandra Lorenzo. She lived here for several years while her husband was stationed here in the Woodlands, and she was my Spanish partner for years. And so we got together on Monday mornings and spoke Spanish, and I helped her with her English, and she helped me with my Spanish. But on her, she's a graphics designer, and on her Instagram page for a while, she was playing around with color palettes. And what she did was she went into Photoshop and she did her eyedropper tool and touched it. And then that gave her, see the numbers down here? So I didn't get it exactly right, but that gave her the color of that beetle. And these are called PMS colors right here. So if you know that that's a certain color, you can have that certain color made, that exact color made into paint. And then if you're working on Photoshop, then you can also touch that eyedropper and make sure that your client's green is the same color of green that you're using. So this is where this really comes in handy. But here, Sandra is working with, in this beetle, I've got these 4 colors and they're harmonious in nature. So I know that they're going to be harmonious as a graphics artist if I use these 4 pictures, these 4 colors in a painting. So that was what she was doing for a while, was just working with these different little color palettes and just taking her eyedropper and touching it to figure out exactly what color palette she would then be using. So I thought it was kind of interesting how she, as a graphics artist, has to play with colors the same as we do as a photographer. We have to play with colors as well. And we have to make sure that they're right and that they work. Questions on that? Or have you ever worked with that? Amanda, what have you done?
I've actually done some graphic design. I do a lot of graphic design at work.
Okay.
Use Adobe Illustrator and
Yeah.
Canva and things like that. And so, yeah, the Pantone colors.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating, actually.
Yes. And what goes well together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Anybody else play with it?
Oh, I do. I also do some graphic design, and for years I've worked with the colors, and it's one of my favorite things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And then finding the color palettes that go together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when I had my my latest logo done, the artist gave me, this is my black, this is my white, this is my turquoise, this is my gray, and I'm supposed to adhere to those colors. It was designed for a specific reason. You know. Yeah. Good. Well, then you two, Jennifer and Amanda, anybody else ever played with this before? No? Okay. So Jennifer and Amanda, then this one will be fairly easy for you. So this is called, where did I give it to you? It's up there at the top. There it is. It's called Color Hunt. And it's at colorhunt.co. And these are color palettes that on Color Hunt, they have already figured out that, okay, this color, this color, this color, and this color go well together. And so this is where, if you need to, you have some pink flowers and you have some, you want to know, well, what can I do with these pink flowers? And you're going to have to do an artificial background or maybe put in some, doodads along with those pink flowers instead of relying on just your own innate ability. This might be where we have to do a color palette that has already been approved and people like it and it works. And so this is colorhunt.co, and to show different color palettes. And why I keep emphasizing this is because when we start doing setups, flowers or macro, we need to make sure that the elements inside the photograph all have color harmony. Otherwise, they're just off. And if they're off, and people aren't going to enjoy looking at our photograph. So we've got to still work with that color harmony, even though Amanda and Jennifer, since you all work with it on a daily basis, it might already be embedded in that brain of yours. And yeah. Or as you're searching, I find myself searching all the time for backgrounds that are just wrong. The one I pull out of the closet is wrong. I bought some of the worst backgrounds in the world from Hobby Lobby, and they are just the wrong colors for everything that I've ever tried to do with them. And I think I finally just threw them away because they were no fun to work with anymore because they were always wrong. And especially under available light with photography, they turned things different colors, and it wasn't any fun to play with anymore. So you can rub your cursor over one of these colors, all of these colors, and you'll get the exact colors on these. And if anything, it might just help you to see, well, what color of background do I need? And how do I put these together?
So if you were photographing pink flowers, you would then just go to something that has pink in it?
You can start asking for pink, find that exact shade of pink, and then this would give you a good idea of what colors you should put with it.
Okay.
Instead of hunting around, opening closets and seeing what goes
Sure.
well with it and that type of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Because you notice, Henry, your shirt is kind of this
Yep.
peach color right there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a resource tool that you can use. And especially when doing macro and flower photography, setup photography, where we've got to get the colors, if we don't get the colors right, then it's just not going to work.
Sure.
Any words of expertise, Amanda or Jennifer, on working with color palettes?
Well, have fun with it. I mean, that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's free for everybody, but Adobe has a similar thing too at color.adobe.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll even kind of like have the color wheel, and there's a lot there too.
Yeah. Okay. Good resource.
There's
Jennifer?
also a website called Picular. I
Uh-huh.
think it's Picular, that let's say you wanted to take pictures of bluebonnets, you could type in a bluebonnet and it'll give you exactly the color, the number
Uh-huh.
that a bluebonnet is. It works for anything you can type in, search for anything.
Very good.
HEB or McDonald's even, and it'll tell you what colors are associated with that brand or that
Uh-huh.
object.
Yeah. Yeah. Because your brand colors, logo colors have to be exact.
Mhm.
They have to be absolutely exact. And they've got specific colors that they use. Good job. Thanks. So this is something fun to play with. We'll come back to it. And then your composition when you're designing your flower photographs. So starting at the very beginning, and once again, this might be a refresher for some of you, or it might be the first time you've seen it, but symmetrical composition is kind of the beginning phase of composition. Symmetrical composition is where one side looks exactly like the other side. The left looks exactly like the right. And we get symmetrical composition in a lot of flowers. This is a heliconia down in the rainforest, better known as a lobster claw. People call it a lobster claw, but it's symmetrical. One side looks exactly like the other side, symmetrical composition. So it's real easy to photograph because it's got symmetry to it. A rose would be symmetrical. One side looks exactly like the other side. And symmetrical composition in photography is almost always pleasing because we like things that are balanced. So one side looks exactly like the other side. It's a nice way just to design something that's simple, and you know that it's not going to be too out of this world, just a nice symmetrical photograph. Symmetrical, one side looks exactly like the other side. So it's the same thing if we're doing in garden design, symmetrical composition. Symmetrical composition. So the one side of the photograph looks almost exactly like the other side of the photograph. But then if we step out of that just a little bit, then we can move that symmetrical into asymmetrical. And asymmetrical is where one side does not look like the other side. But asymmetrical composition should also still have a balance to it. It should still have some sort of harmony to it so that we can look at it and we can stay inside the photograph without getting distracted and moving out of the photograph. So asymmetrical is slightly off balance, but there should be something that draws the eye. So for me, anyway, the eye goes to where the cat is, and then we have this round going around, coming back to where the cat is again. So the sculptor, I think, did exactly that, takes you all the way around, brings you back around, and you come back to the cat's eye. So pulling that into the photograph as well, trying to bring that harmony into the photograph. So using that asymmetrical to keep the eye moving around the frame. Our eye, by the way, human eye always goes to the eye of the subject, even if it is a statue. So our eye always goes to their eye. And then not also having anything that distracts or that pulls away from the viewer's eye. So asymmetrical composition, moving away. And then sweeping into sweeps or diagonals. So we're moving throughout the frame in kind of a diagonal pattern, playing around with a real shallow depth of field and, you know, blurring and that type of thing. So playing around with that. And once again, trying to keep everything in harmony with the artificial backgrounds. And nothing says that we can't get a little bit more edgy and start moving things off to the side, for instance, or playing with things. If it has good composition for you, and if you like that composition, then let it be, because we're just playing around with some basic guidelines of composition. So here the sun could have been more over toward a little bit, but what the heck, I liked it like that. So, you know, playing around with where we put our things. And then golden thirds goes back to the ancient Greeks. So we divide the frame into 9 equal rectangles, and we put the most interesting element and also the element in focus on one of those intersecting lines. So we can put it here, or we can put it here, or we can put it here, or we can put it here. But in this case, I'm putting an intersecting lines right there. That's where the brightest part of the frame is, and that's where the focus point is as well. So golden thirds is where we divide the frame into 9 equal rectangles. So golden thirds, we divide the frame into 9 equal rectangles. The brightest colors, we always go to either red, yellow, or blue in the frame first. So the brightest colors are going to attract our eye. And then hopefully our eye moves around the frame. But because I'm not letting the viewer see much of anything else in focus except the claret cup cactus, I'm hopefully drawing the viewer's eye just to the claret cup. And then since everything else in the background is out of focus, the viewer knows it's there, but the viewer doesn't necessarily get stuck going back in there. This, by the way, is a private ranch in the Texas Hill Country, and it's completely covered in red granite. It's amazing. It's if you've ever been to Enchanted Rock, it's like walking around Enchanted Rock, but it's a private ranch, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge. We got access to it last spring. So golden thirds, you see where I put the sun? So the divided the frame into 9 equal rectangles, put the sun on that one of those intersecting lines. And that's the brightest area of the frame. So hopefully the viewer's eye goes right there and then stays in the frame using that f22. In this case, it's an f32, and I think it's almost an f45 using that super wide angle lens. Your starburst, by the way, on the sun is a closed down aperture. So that's your f22 or 32 or 45, depending on what your smallest aperture is. And when you shoot directly into the sun, that's what gives you the starburst. So closing down that aperture as small as you can get it and then shooting into the sun. So playing around with where we put that sun and how we do our composition, that golden thirds comes into play. Tulip, simple tulip, golden thirds comes into play again. And then just letting the sunlight come in from the side. So golden thirds can come in here. So if you put the blue bonnets right down here on that golden third, then that's the brightest area in the frame. Hopefully the viewer's eye comes in there. When I did the photos for the Backroads of Texas book and the Backroads of the Texas Hill Country books, I had to include roads in my photographs for years. So when I was out working, I was constantly including roads in my photographs. And it was quite a challenge because we don't have the best looking roads all the time. And many times we also have orange cones and orange tape around the edge of roads for some reason due to maintenance or something. So think about where you're putting that element, golden third, brightest element, eye enters there and then moves around the frame. And then diagonals as well. So the diagonal is once again a very aggressive compositional element. This is a Luna moth. So using that diagonal to show off his wings, his eye spots. Diagonal going from the blue through the red in the garden photo. And diagonal playing around with the fall colors on the Virginia creeper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even playing around with a diagonal here with the peony. There's your peony, Amanda. Yeah. Yeah. So playing around with your peony. This, by the way, this was an interesting thing. I was out photographing on a Sunday morning and the wedding had happened the night before and all the flowers from the wedding were still there. All the flowers, everybody's bouquets, everything was still there. And I was thinking about how much money they spent on those flowers and how much time they spent on those flowers and those flower arrangements. And it's Sunday morning and they're all just sitting there. So I had a great time photographing this bride's flowers and playing around with her flowers because nobody else was there. But, you know, it's just such a waste, such beautiful, beautiful creations. Yeah. And then think about your layout. So is this going to be a horizontal or is this going to be a vertical? So we follow the lines. This horizontal is because of the way the fern leaf is flowing, but then the vertical, the way that the vine is growing up the wall. Is it a horizontal or is it a vertical? Remember, we can turn the camera both ways and we should be turning it both ways, not cropping later on. We should be turning it both ways. So here's just a little example of my wildflower shoot last spring at that ranch. And these are just 3 of the photos that I took in a series of me trying to figure out where the photo is. So I start with this one over on the left-hand side with these claret cups, and I start with that. And luckily we had this beautiful overcast rainy day, so we had no shadows that we were dealing with. So I start with that. And then move to the middle photograph because we see that there's this little tiny grasshopper in the claret cup on the middle photograph. So then move to that and then figure out what the background is going to be and how low I'm going to get or how high I'm going to get. And then moving to my final picture that I finally liked over on the right-hand side of figuring out how much of the background we're going to see, how low we're going to go, what's the angle going to be, all the other elements that have to go into the photograph. So it's many times not our first photograph in photographing the flower, but it might be our 9th or 10th before we actually get to where we've figured out exactly what it's going to be. So here, following along with the verticals, do you have one preference over the other?
I like the one on the far right.
You like the far right one? Yeah. Anybody else have an opinion?
No, I like that one also, the one on the far right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one, the stick in the back kind of ends up bothering me. Second one, but then it seems like it gets a little more perfected as it goes on. Yeah. Figuring out.
Is that a little critter in that flower there?
Yeah, it's a little grasshopper.
Yeah.
Yeah. They turned out to be these little baby grasshoppers everywhere. So when you find a little baby grasshopper, you got to do something with it, especially when it's sitting on top of a claret cup cactus. And same subject, but maybe it's a horizontal. So that vertical, that horizontal, that vertical, that horizontal, which way do we go? This is where sometimes it takes us a half hour, 45 minutes just to photograph one flower, because we're not sure whether it's going to look good as verticals, what the angle is going to be. We're not sure if it's going to look better as a horizontal. So that, that 9-10 photographs is really just us as photographers trying to figure out which way is the better way to go. So when we look at something, we decide whether it's going to be horizontal or whether it's going to be horizontal. Horizontal. There's your lilies like you were working with, Susan. Or whether it's going to be vertical. So which one of these things are we going to emphasize, and what are we going to push forward for our final photograph? So is it going to be vertical or is it going to be horizontal? Which way are we going to go? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's all in the final product that we're trying to produce, final photograph we're trying to produce. And then remember that flat to the film plane. We talked about it briefly in last class, because the depth of field is absolutely parallel to the back of the camera. So if this is your camera and this is your subject, then if you tilt your camera, then your depth of field also tilts. If you tilt your camera, your depth of field also tilts. So if you tilt your camera, your depth of field tilts. So you have to keep the camera absolutely parallel to the subject when we're working with those really shallow depth of fields. And many of you all were doing that when you were working with your previous photographs. You were working with really shallow depth of fields. But we got to hold that camera steady, and we got to make sure we're absolutely parallel to the back of the camera to get flat to the film plane. That holds true for your spiders, your butterflies, all your other critters like that. Say it holds true for your flowers. And then for your butterflies, Lexi likes to photograph butterflies. So we've got to keep that camera parallel to the back of to the butterflies so that we can maximize our depth of field. Same thing with your swallowtails. So it's just one of those standard principles of photography. When we're as close as we can get and we've got a really shallow depth of field, then we want to make sure that we keep our camera as flat to the film plane as we possibly can. All of those little dots, or drips on the canna lily, keeping them as parallel to the camera as we can. Do that with the eyes of the red-eyed tree frog too. Otherwise, one eye's out of focus and the other eye's in focus, and then it's not any good. So keep both those eyes in focus to flat to the film plane. And then trying on something like a tulip to keep it flat to the film plane to maximize our depth of field on that. So it's a bit of a challenge sometimes. But then occasionally we might want to go off plane and just play with that shallow depth of field, but we still have to make sure that there's enough that lets the viewer's eye rest, settle, and not think that it's an out of focus picture. It's enough to be in focus. It's pleasing enough. Questions? Comments? And things are starting to bloom now outside. The azaleas are almost gone, but things are starting to bloom now. So I show you from last class. This is one of the students. This is the color palette she chose, because that's going to be part of your homework assignment. And then this is what she ended up photographing. Yeah. Close up of a banana flower. And it matches the color palette. Yeah. So that's what she did last time. Somebody did last time. So your homework assignment for you is you are going to create an image with flowers that illustrates primary colors. So you can use either the red or the yellow, or you can use the blue and the yellow, or you can use, even in the same palette, you could use all blue, or you could use all red, or you could use all yellow. So you're going to create an image with flowers that illustrates primary colors. You're going to create an image with flowers that illustrates complementary colors. And so your complementary colors that we had were your red and green, and your orange and your blue, and your yellow and your purple, your complementary colors. And then I'd like you to go find a color palette on Color Hunt and create an image with flowers using that color palette. And the clematis over here on the side was blooming in a previous student's yard. So then she started digging through her closet to find something that matched by the color palette. So the color palette you see that she used is below. So you're going to choose an image with flowers that uses your chosen color palette on Color Hunt. Now, I am not assigning you a color palette. I'm not going to be that mean. So you get to go find your own color palette, or if you're reverse engineering, go find your flower and then find a color palette that matches it. So whichever way you want to work is totally up to you. And then I want you to select one of the basics of composition that we've talked about. So that would be either symmetrical, asymmetrical, rule of thirds, triangles or threes, and diagonals, and select one of those basic compositions and create an image from that. So you've got a primary color image, complementary color image, a color palette image, and then you've got one of the basic compositions and creating an image from there. So you've got 4 images that you have to create this week. Questions? No. Remember your focus. Keep your focus tight. Keep your focus clean. Look at that clematis. Look how tight that focus is. She did a great job on that one. Yeah, because that's a 3-dimensional flower. So that's a really hard one to do. But she's got it totally in focus. So keep your focus tight. Use that tripod, Lexi, okay? Okay. Okay, questions on your homework? Nope. Okay, I look forward to working with you all then next Monday night. Any questions on anything before we leave? No? Okay, so I'm going to quit sharing my screen. Okay, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. And then we'll come back together next Monday night and see what you all created this week, okay? I'll share the recording with you tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off.